Hey, welcome back, Rankers, and thanks to Russ Grease this week from Kentucky, who did an impersonation of me. Very funny. On to other things. So, Google has announced plans to acquire a company called Frommer's Travel Guides, and it's all about content acquisition. So, a couple of months ago, they bought Zagat, which was all about restaurant review guides. And with all of these things, you can imagine they're going to build it into the local search results so you can get a better picture, a better experience of, okay, there's an Indian restaurant here that's come up in search. It's got some reviews, but whose reviews do I trust? Or that hotel, whose reviews do I trust? TripAdvisor? Where do I? So these guys are getting all that content themselves. And, you know, they're saying, and Google has always said, oh, look, you know, we won't ever favour our own properties, you know, such as this one that they've just bought, over other sites providing the same sort of content. Maybe they're right. I mean, at the last count, Google had about 54,000 employees. They can't all be in collusion. Mind you, 20,000 of those are from their Motorola acquisition. God knows how many extra 100 or 150 or something is picked up today with this acquisition. But it brings me to another point. Google is getting more and more involved in capturing more and more markets. You know, they've pretty much nearly killed the comparison shopping engine with Google Shopping. Google Shopping is now a pay-for-play, like some of all those comparison shopping engines out there. We're seeing it get involved in acquiring all these sorts of different pieces of content and driving everyone through their funnel. They own Chrome. So the most popular browser now, Android, certainly, well, close to being the most popular operating system for phones. But there's a lot going on where they're funneling you, the user, through all of their different properties. And then we get this announcement over the weekend from Google about an update to the algorithm. We're used to that. We get about 30 to 40 a month, right? Except this one, kind of quiet, not much about it. And it's from Amit Singhal from engineering. And he said, basically, we're going to start taking into account how many valid copyright removal notices we get that relate to your site. So you might have 100,000 pages on your site, and let's just say you're a music site. And you might put a piece of music up of an artist who you reviewed or something. Well, you might not own that piece of music, and someone can file a copyright infringement notice under the US Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is a very nasty piece of work, and then Google will be forced to take that piece of content down if it's a valid copyright notice. Now, what Google is saying is that if you get a lot of those sorts of notices, that's going to affect the ranking of your entire site. And they go on to say here that, well, you know, we've had more than 4.3 million URLs in the last 30 days alone. I found that extraordinary number. Huge, massive. And everything I've read on this, even the thing that I was interviewed in yesterday in Smart Company, which was a great article, I don't think this is going to have terribly much effect on business, but it's a bit chilling because we get this announcement come out. We're told that, you know, we've had 4.5 million URLs just in the last month. And you go, really? Now you go and have a look at those numbers. Look at this graph. This is the graph of URLs requested to be removed from search per week. Now, it's true, in the last month, there's been nearly 4.5 million. But this graph spans about 12 months. And look what's happened here. This is June 18. Around here, it's gone through the roof. And the chief submitter is a company called Degban Limited. And they basically, their business is doing this. It's, from what I've read and what I can read on their site, it's about going out and getting removal notices, copyright notices, and some of their customers are presumably the large copyright holders. We've seen the Recording Industry Association here is the #1 copyright owner in the past month, so presumably, you know, a large percentage of this 1 million maybe comes from the Recording Industry Association of America. But this is an extraordinary event for Google to go and say that in their blog and not give us any indication that, you know, in June, you probably had a third of that. Look back here in February. would have been lucky to have been a few 100,000, from what I can tell there. But now, this has spiked right up. And Google's response over the last month, this spike has happened to say, okay, we're going to include it in the results. Well, you might say, well, you know, if there's torrent sites out there, downloading movies, all that sort of stuff, yeah, why not? They're breaking the law. They're publishing somebody else's content. Take them down. Well, it says here valid copyright removal notices. So how long does it take to work that out if it's a valid copyright removal notice? What does valid even mean? Which brings me to Dave Gorman. Many of you who will know and love. And let me bring you to his blog post. This is a blog post from March 14 where he got a copyright notice, takedown notice from the company that we're talking about, or was issued to Flickr, the photo sharing site, and it basically said, hey, this photo, it breaks copyright. Now, this is an automated service that Degban presumably ran. It has to be. 1 million URLs in the last month? That's ridiculous. Turns out that there wasn't any infringing photograph on Dave Gorman's site at all. It had just been this automated piece of software had actually got it wrong. It had found a link somewhere on a site whose brand name related to that site, pointing at an image. I mean, we'll probably get one for, well, I'm surprised we haven't got one for so much room for activities. If you Google that, you can see that we're, I don't know, number 1 or number 2, and we've got a photo. But with the event of memes and photographs just exploding all over the net, this could become very bad because, you know, in Australia, for instance, we don't have a fair use law, but this isn't about Australian law. This is about US law. And Google seems to inflict pain and then ask questions later. It seems to close tube accounts and then ask questions later, and then the person has to go and get the whole thing reinstated. And you can go and get this thing reinstated, but it looks like that you're going to have to be really careful about the sorts of things you publish. If you're going to, even if you're giving attribution to a photograph, for instance, you can still have, you know, this takedown notice be issued against you. And I would bring you to the attention of this guy who is, let me bring you his name, who basically had a whole bunch of takedown notices or copyright infringement notices issued against him by the Church of Scientology. And basically his YouTube account got shut down. He eventually opened another one, but he still says there's a whole bunch of URLs that do not appear in the Google index because of DMCA takedown notices. So it's not like Google can go and force you to take that content off your page. Can't do that. All it can do is remove it from the index. And when we see this sort of spike in activity around copyright infringement notices, this is scary, because I think this sort of change that Google is announcing is going to limit variety that we can find via Google as a search engine. And it's going to be really, how much do I have to pay these guys to get a bunch of takedown notices against a particular competitor of ours? And how spurious do they have to be for Google to understand whether it's a valid copyright removal notice? I don't know what valid means in this context, and Google's not explaining it either. So something to watch out for, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks very much. Bye.